Welcome to Life Talk. This is a podcast where we discuss real life issues within the young people in the Ethiopian and Eritrean community. In this conversation, we talked about the identity issues within our community. A lot of young people feel lost and unsure about who they are. And so we hope that you connect with this topic and you join us for more.
There is a lot of struggle, because they're living in two different worlds. When they go home, they're Ethiopian, they speak Amharic. Most of their parents might not speak English, well. Those young adults struggle a lot with their mama, Ethiopian, Eritrean,
I was gonna say, while you were speaking, you brought up like resentment, feeling resentment towards other people, towards yourself, whatever it is, and also dealing with racism, xenophobia, things like that. I remember one thing I thought about was resentment towards your own parents, especially because a majority of our parents are immigrants. I barely know any Abisha parent who's over the age of 30 that was born in America, right? I remember personally, I resented my parents. There was one instance actually that ties in with the resentment towards your parents and dealing with xenophobia and racism. I don't remember how old I was. I think I was 8 or 9 years old.
Could you define xenophobia?
Xenophobia is hate or discrimination towards people who are foreigners, not of the same country or same the same not race, that are foreign. And so I remember this one instance. I think we were at a Nissan dealership and we were at the office, and I don't know why I remember this so vividly, but it was because it really tugged on my heartstrings. We were there. It was me, my dad, and my mom. Yeah, me, my dad, and my mom. And we were waiting in the office, and this big, burly, white man, Fedenge man, walks into the office. He sits on the corner desk, the corner of his desk. And I remember my mom was talking to him. My mom is more fair-skinned. If you've seen my mom, you've definitely met my mom. She's more fair-skinned, right? So I've noticed that even growing up, she was treated a little bit better than my dad. And my dad is my skin tone a little bit darker. Still just as amazing, whatever, right? All these great qualities. But I remember him being treated differently than my mom was. We walked in there. My mom speaks with a little bit less of an accent than my father does. So she was speaking to him. He understood her, whatever. And then when my dad was trying to explain to him, he was very just standoffish towards my dad. And that was something I was noticing. I was why is my dad being treated differently than my mom? And that's definitely something I remember vividly, because I was okay, why is this happening? Obviously there's a difference in how my parents look, but they're still the same. They're still trying to get the same point across. And that's something that I've really thought about. But then sometimes that turns into resentment, where it's why couldn't you just be the white parents? Why couldn't you I brought that up sometimes when my parents and I are arguing, because that's inevitable. You're always going to argue with somebody. There's points of contention. But I remember I was why can't we just be Fedenge parents? Why can't you guys why can't we be a white household, things like that? And it's you have to remember that's such that hits really hard to my parents, because it's what we can't change we can't change how we look physically. We weren't born here, you weren't born here, so there's really nothing we can do. But it's I'm trying my best to I'm trying my best to provide the best life for you guys, but it's at the same time I was feeling this resentment towards my parents, where it's why couldn't you guys be why couldn't you be less strict? Why couldn't you talk when we're in public? Why can't you lower your voice when you're on the phone? Why do you talk with an accent? Things like this. Now I understand. Now I'm more I'm compassionate when it comes to those things. Now I embrace my culture a lot more than I did when I was younger. That's definitely something that I've heard other people talk about, is resentment towards their parents for not acting like these, white picket fence houses, your stereotypical white family, people who've been here their entire lives, who know how to have this structure. And it's that's definitely something that could also apply to people outside of our culture, but because we are discussing within our community, that's something that I think is really important.
You raised a very nice point.
Yeah, for sure.
I think 2 weeks ago we had this repairs of the Bracknell summit,
Yeah.
and we have you remember we have a lunch at Dr. Muski's house, and she was saying, even asking forgiveness, from this generation, sorry, we brought you here, yes, so that we can get a good education, you can get, a good living standard, but understand this, yes, you're resentful towards us, you're angry towards us, but be understood. I'm born, raised as an Ethiopian, and I can't be, she said, I can't be like a suburban white mom or maybe an African American. I can't be like that. So because kids why did you bring me here? Why did you and expose me to all this trauma in heart? That's a lived experience of this generation. Even I was in one meeting with that's a big Baptist Southern Baptist convention, and there's a lot of debate going on, and finally, of course, they recognize this is their lived experience, they say, and we have to deal with that because this is an issue that's so hot, especially during the COVID. You remember this racism issue? Is there racism here in this country? Is there any systemic racism in this country? How is the social environment? But one thing that in that conference was recognized is this is their lived experience. This is what they have experienced. This is what they feel towards others. This is how they feel that they are. This is what they perceive. So we need to take that and work on that. That's good. So that you can really go beyond our personal experiences and try to do something to fix the social environment if that contributes to identity crisis. It's a worsening of this negative self-image, even negative image towards others. But not only to your mom, to your dad, this generation resented towards this country, resented towards others, and that's resentment. It makes you ineffective in so many ways. It's in your relationships, in your workplaces. Look, even we can look at characters from history, from scripture, from other sources. I'm grown up as a Christian. As an evangelical, I'm an evangelical Christian as well. The story of Joseph, being mistreated with his own brothers. It's not about being mistreated with white or African American, with other national, but this can happen with your own brother, with your own sister. And the most important thing is how are you going to deal with it? How are you going over it? How did Joseph handles that hurt, mistreated, rejected, sold by his own brothers?
Right.
So and we need to understand this is also a human sin nature too. In that we can bring that issue as well. So that's a major issue, resentment towards your own mom and dad and your own community, and it goes to resentment towards the nation, white American, African American. It could be to anyone, that could be directed to someone. So that has created a lot of, and so that once you feel that spirit of rejection and resentment, that creates anger, and as I said, it could increase violence, and make you more violent, and definitely, and that could lead to substance abuses, to mental illnesses. Some of them really struggle with anxiety, with depression. It could lead to you can repress it, and you want to reject your own identity, or you want to conform with and excessive responses. Kid come to and the social activism, the political activism that you see sometimes would help improve the social environment and the contexts, but also it could be an excessive response too. Yeah. So there's a huge impact on our social, emotional, physical, and career. Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's an interesting dynamic as a child because, in one hand, you're grateful for an opportunity to live in the West, to have a Western education, to live in, depending on where you live. Not everybody's experiencing this, but relative safety, and to be nourished, and in a free country like this, you see the sacrifice your parents made to come here, and you have to be grateful for it. But on the other hand, there's also a lot of negative stereotypes about being Ethiopian. Like I remember, there's a South Park episode where they had this character, I think it was like Starvin Marvin or something like that. It's just this anorexic guy, and they just made fun of this. They made a character out of a starving Ethiopian.
Yeah.
And I remember like hearing that, like being called that, having other Ethiopians being called that, or people ask where you from, and all the only
Do they have water there?
yeah, do they have what else? They said, do you have water there? Do you use their food there?
Right.
War, and all they could think about is the negative stereotypes. So so I remember just personally like struggling to have pride in where I came from. Like I was just like, I'm not proud to be Ethiopian, man. Like I'm just not. Like I kind of wish I was something else, And it wasn't until like I actually took a trip to Ethiopia, like for the first time. I was 20 years old. This was maybe 2015 or something like that, and I went to Ethiopia, and I got to see the beautiful culture, and learn a lot about the history, and see the beautiful landscape. My aunt is a geographer, and so she creates maps in Ethiopia, and I think another family friend is a historian. So she was just telling me like the lineage of kings and the history of Ethiopia. And I remember just thinking, wow, like man, if I really studied up on Ethiopian culture, I could have something to counter the negative influence of negative stereotypes. And so that's something I just really struggled with.